You're my first interview, so like you're the guinea pig. If this all goes horribly wrong and we have to do it again, I was like, who's going to be the most chilled out if we have to do everything over? Definitely Nerissa. Hello, welcome to Craft in Motion, a podcast about the machines we love and the humans they connect us with. I'm your host, Wes Reyneke, and joining me today, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, is my dear friend, Nerissa Cerny. Intro jingle. Nerissa, in your garage over there, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. So straight off the gate, I've got to say, like when I was prepping for this, kind of looking at, how do I introduce you? What all do you do? I love your Instagram handle because it just sums everything up. Nerissa nonstop. Because I feel like I don't know how you breathe. So you, by day, you're an emissions engineer at Harley-Davidson. You're the founder of Iron Angels, which is an all high school girl bike building team squad. You are teaching people about bikes through your channel She Knows Moto, and you are lifting weights and farming in your garden. Have I left anything out?
I think you've hit the big ones. I try to have a social life sometimes too, I promise.
But the thing I'm most interested in is this Arizona suburban farming project that you've kind of fallen into. So for those that don't know, you were in Milwaukee working at Harley-Davidson, and then you moved to Arizona because they've got a pretty big research facility there, right? And a sort of engineering center.
Yeah, so in Arizona, we have our test facility. It's a test track where we do a lot of the developmental type tests on new products. And yeah, I'm in Phoenix now, and we're going to be building up that operation. There's just a few of us engineers that moved out here a couple of years ago. But yeah, I kind of got sick of snow. I lived in Wisconsin my whole life, and this opportunity it came up, and talked to my manager, and it all worked out. So I've been in Phoenix just over 2 years now, and the house that my husband and I bought ended up being somewhat of a mini farm. And I mean, obviously, we knew that when we bought the house because we looked at it before we bought it. But I don't think I realized how much work was involved when we first signed the papers. And now that I've been here 2 years, it's been quite an adventure. And it's so funny because I swear my mini farm updates on my Instagram get more attention than any of my motorcycle posts. People love the mini farm updates.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I mean, so I was actually going to ask that. So you were Wisconsin born and raised. So
Yes.
had you lived anywhere else previously, or were you literally in Wisconsin up until 2 years ago?
Yeah, I was up in Wisconsin until 2 years ago. It's funny to me because I always felt uh, like deep in my heart, I'm an adventurer and I love traveling. And I can't believe it took that long to finally leave Wisconsin. But this is kind of how the cards played out, I guess. And I'm so glad I took the opportunity. Moving away from my Midwest roots was scary, but I'm so happy I did. I love it out in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, having known you, like, it's not like you haven't been adventurous. I mean, yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, you live in Wisconsin, but half the time when you were living there, you do a lot of traveling, you do a lot of, I think I've seen you. No, I've probably seen you in Wisconsin more than out of Wisconsin, but I mean, we ran into each other in Portland, and you're always on your bike. You have the raddest bike, by the way.
Thanks.
What is it called? The purple disco machine? Purple disco
The purple
dream?
disco.
That is
The
it.
purple disco machine. That's it.
Purple wheels,
Yeah.
oil slick paint job. It's brilliant.
Thanks.
Um,
It's kind of an extension of me, I guess.
yeah, it's a lowrider S, correct?
Yeah, it's a 2020 Lowrider
Yeah,
S.
which is
That's my
which is one
daily.
of the which is one of the bikes you helped develop. I mean, you worked on that bike in a sense, and I still remember arguing with someone because you told me that you designed the cooler on that bike, and someone was arguing with me that it didn't have a cooler, and I was like, I have it on really good authority. I have it on really good authority that it does. No, it's air cooled. I'm like, no, there's oil cooling in there too, and some liquid cooling, and they were like, no, there isn't. I'm like, trust me, I without beyond a shadow of a doubt tell you that it does. So we actually, we met building a Harley Sportster together
Mhm.
in Milwaukee. I think actually we went in Milwaukee. We were in Kenosha, which is pretty much on the edge of Milwaukee.
Yeah, just South
And
Milwaukee. Oh, same thing.
yeah, and I remember like one of the most fun things about building that Sportster was that we had this Bassani exhaust that they had just produced, and we had an open velocity stack. And I remember sitting in their workshop, and the bike just sounded and ran like shit. And then you plug your laptop in because you'd actually taken the exhaust to the factory with the velocity stack and hand built a custom tuning. And I thought to myself, like, how often do you have an actual engineer build like a custom like factory tuning for your bike? Like that just doesn't that's just not something that's accessible to mere mortals.
To mere mortals. Yeah, I guess. Thanks. That was such a fun project. It was ultimately kind of a marketing dig, but that bike that we built was so cool. I still think that someday, if I ever bought my own Sportster, I would want to replicate that design
Oh
somehow.
yeah. Oh, I've had that thought multiple times. Like that's happening one day. Definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe not as a cafe racer because I am a big guy and it wasn't exactly the most comfortable bike on the planet. So maybe everything but the handlebars.
Oh yeah, I could see that. We put some pretty tall shocks on it though. It sat
Yeah, we
pretty
did.
high and had a lot of leg room.
Yeah, yeah. And then I remember that the cool thing about that trip was because that was so, like you said, that was a marketing thing. Harley-Davidson got a bunch of press and actual Harley staffers and influencers and everyone together. We built some custom bikes, and then we had them at Mama Tried, and which is one of my favorite shows. It's such a great, crazy kind of unpretentious motor show. And then we did Flat Out Friday, and then I went back the following year, and you weren't on the build team, but you were racing Flat Out Friday. So just for anyone who doesn't know, just explain what Flat Out Friday is and how absolutely gnarly it is.
Yeah. So Flat Out Friday usually happens in conjunction with the Mama Tried show. It's the same weekend in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it it's been over 10 years now that they've had the show going on. It started as most shows start, as a small grassroots thing, a couple bikes in an old warehouse with shitty lighting kind of thing. But it's grown so much over the years. And, being from Milwaukee, those of us who are from Milwaukee are so proud to see that growth because, like I said, it's such a grassroots movement. I remember talking to Scott, one of the founders of the show, and he said that their focus was really to bring different types of riders and motorcyclists together. It's the racers, it's the dirt bike people, it's the custom build chopper guys, but it's also people who are just making amazing memories and building these stories, riding their motorcycles across the country or across the world, and it's all right there in the show. So, the show happens in the middle of winter in Wisconsin, which is the worst time to visit Wisconsin
In
because
February.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
so cold. My favorite was always watching the California guys come
Oh
and
yeah.
stand in line for Flat Out Friday because for the race. So Flat Out Friday obviously happens on Friday that weekend,
Yeah.
and it's an indoor flat track race. And you have to line up outside to haul everything in, right? And I mean, it's like negative 10 degrees F outside, and these West Coast people are just like, "How do you guys live here?"
Yeah. And the South African. I mean, the first time I went to Milwaukee, I experienced it, I came back. The second time I went to Milwaukee, I went to an outdoor store and I bought like a ski jacket basically. And then
Mhm.
I went back again feeling like, then I felt like a local because I felt like I knew how cold it was going to be. But the first time I was like, why is this show in February? Like, why, why are we doing this?
It's because we go crazy in the wintertime in Wisconsin because we can't ride on the road, right?
Yeah,
So the
totally. Yeah.
show became a way to kind of like scratch that itch. And we're like, oh man, okay, motorcycles. All is right in the world again.
Yeah. Do you think that's why it transcends like sort of genres of bikes so well? Because when you walk around Mama Tried and Flat Out Friday, it doesn't feel like a chopper show or a cafe racer show. Everyone kind of gets along, but everyone's very different. You've got your sort of one percenters, leather vest kind of guys, and then you got your sort of young hipster like cafe racer fans, and everyone just kind of hangs out and kicks tires together. It kind of feels like a Saturday morning social meetup. Like there's no kind of judgment of what kind of style you like. And I mean, do you think that's just because everyone's just so desperate to do something motorcycle related that all that shit just kind of falls away?
I think that's part of it, absolutely. I also think a big part of it is just the culture that the local riders, the local Milwaukee people bring to it. And obviously the guys that own the show, that organize it, they set it up very intentionally. But I think that they do a good job of bringing a lot of that Milwaukee flavor into it. And one of my favorite things about the Milwaukee riding culture is that it's exactly that. It's so inclusive. It's not judgmental. A lot of people think, oh, Milwaukee, the home of Harley Davidson, it's all Harley riders. And yeah, there's a lot of that there, obviously, but there's so much more too. It's more of a, oh hey, you like motorcycles? I like motorcycles too. Let's be friends. It's more
Yeah.
of that kind of culture. And there's a lot of positive peer pressure, I'll say, amongst the Milwaukee people. Like, you know, in the years that I lived there, I started getting into all sorts of riding. I did ice riding, I did dirt riding, all these flat track. I would have never tried that if my friends didn't pressure me into trying it. And now I'm so glad that I did because it's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think personally, I think that's maybe a byproduct of just the culture in Wisconsin in general. Like when I went there, I actually think it was the first time I went to the States. I went to Milwaukee. So I've been to California, I've been to Portland, don't know where else I've been, but first time was Milwaukee. And it was weird because I just felt like the culture was so South African. People are really hospitable, people are really friendly. There's kind of a sort of old school hospitality to the way people are. You know, it's like everyone's really sweet. Everyone's, and it just feels like everyone wants to just like hang out with you and feed you, which is very South African, you know. And I guess maybe that's why it's like that, you know, because it's just it is kind of like a friendly city, you know, in the sense of just people just wanting to sort of connect and stuff. Yeah, I had a great time there. I mean, I was kind of bummed I didn't go back a third time in a row. So,
You
but
come back this year.
now I've got an excuse to come to Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. Come to Arizona. There's so much amazing riding in Arizona. I love Milwaukee, and I'm so proud to be from the Midwest and from Wisconsin. You know, for all those reasons you just said. But I love the mountains, and I
Oh
love
yeah,
the scenery and the backdrops. I mean, it just within less than an hour of where I live, there are amazing rides. And not only that, but just being on this part of the country, on closer to the west coast of the US, it's so easy for me to get to Utah, to California, and all these other Nevada, where there's just amazing rides. And I'm so
yeah.
happy to be out here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean that's the thing, and I mean, climate-wise, you were just saying to me like you're headed into winter now, and that's prime riding season now,
Yeah,
as opposed
summertime
to like,
is.
yeah, is it
People
too?
still ride in the summer here, and I do occasionally, but it's short rides, and you have to be very careful about it because it's legitimately dangerous how hot it is. But
Yeah,
you know, it's honestly it's just like winter in Wisconsin, just flipped.
yeah. So I want to talk about She Knows Moto a little bit, because I'm pretty sure as someone who is, I mean, not only are you a woman in STEM, but you're a woman in like motorcycle engineering. So I am as much of a cliche as it is, I'm pretty sure you've been on the receiving end of the sort of like you don't actually know how much I know mansplaining kind of thing, and now you're a woman on Instagram telling men how motorcycles operate, which I think is amazing. But I mean, I guess I have two questions. The one is like, how's the response been? Not just from friends, but just people in general, and just not so much why did you do it, but what's it been like, kind of exploring this thing of like what do you want to share? You know, like how did you figure it all out? How did you navigate going from here's an idea to actually doing it?
Well, it's still ongoing. I'm still in the very early stages, and I'm still figuring it out too. So I don't have all the answers yet, but um,
Well, you're
you know,
killing it so far.
well, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I have had a lot of experiences in real life where, you know, I would volunteer to work at an expo or something where Harley was set up and interact with the customers, talking about our products. And I definitely had moments where people just assumed that I was one of the hired models until I started talking about the camshafts and the inner workings of the engine. And I've literally had people tell me that I talk funny for a girl, which I take as a compliment. So, um, yeah, I do feel like I'm kind of in this unique position of being a female representative in the sport of motorcycling and having this technical knowledge. And really just, I want everybody to realize that there's a place for them in the world of motorcycling, no matter your background or your level of knowledge. There's a place here for everyone. And it's just, I love it so much. I want everybody else to love it. And I think getting into it can be intimidating if you didn't maybe grow up with a parent who was wrenching with you in the garage, or maybe you didn't go to school for engineering. Um, that's that. And then, with my experience in the Iron Angels, you mentioned me mentoring the high school girls, made me realize that there's really this gap that exists. People want to know more about their motorcycles. So I've had this idea for so long, and I finally just started doing it. I'm putting this information out on the internet. And like I said, it's at the very beginning. Right now, it's just like small snippets of information. So how do I decide what to talk about? Right now, it's just easy stuff that I can make short videos on because I'm still learning how to use video editors, and I'm still learning like how to make my own graphics and all these things, right? So I'm just keeping the information into like bite-sized pieces. And I get a lot of feedback from my friends too. Friends who say, "Hey, I've always wondered about this thing. Can you talk about it?" And I think for the most part, it's been really well received so far. It's felt really good to actually go to some events and have people recognize me and say, "Hey, I love how kind you come off in your videos. You're not talking to us as if we're stupid, or you're not, being rude about it or anything. It's so approachable." And that's definitely my goal. So I feel really good that that's how it's being accepted. And I was definitely nervous about putting this information out there, especially as a female in, this realm of the internet. But I haven't gotten many trolls, and it doesn't mean they're not coming. Of course, the trolls are always out there, but
Oh
I
yeah.
think I just, I stick to the facts, and people can't dispute facts, as- even as much as they may try. Um, so overall, it's been pretty positive. And I will say actually that looking at the demographics of my following so far, I do have a pretty high percentage of men that follow me, which I think is great. Just because I'm a female doesn't mean that I'm only talking to females. Like, of course, I want to bring more females into this, but it's
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I like about the videos you've put out so far is it really has this "they are no stupid questions" approach. I'm gonna assume that comes from your time with Iron Angels, because when you're dealing with teenagers, I mean, these are kids that they're not educated beyond high school, so they haven't gone out and learned about some of the stuff, and so you're there
Mhm.
to mentor them and teach them about this. So you automatically know that the place they're coming from is very youthful, very young, very immature, and also not very knowledgeable. And so you have this thing of like, whatever I share with them is new knowledge, and I kind of see that in your videos. It's a thing of like, here's something I'm gonna speak about confidently, and it might, you might be a seasoned mechanic or biker, and you might think this is like very rudimentary, but someone else might listen to it and go, "This is really eye opening. Like I had no idea." I mean, I'm stupid when it comes to mechanics, which is ironic because, like, like I'm in it, and I think there's the stigma. Like, no guy wants to say, like, I don't actually know how that works. Like someone goes, "Oh, you know how you crack open the engine, then you just adjust the cams, and then you go, yep, yep, yep." And actually, you're going, you can do that. You can, but no one wants to go. No one wants to say, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like everyone's just like, yeah, yeah, holding their beers, going, yeah, yeah, totally, yeah, I did that. But I think it's cool to just go, just present the information, and people can quietly sit on the other end of it, and they can go, oh, now I know something. Like, where do you want it to go? Like, what's your big destination for it? Have you thought that far?
I've thought that far for sure. I'm also keeping myself open to just whatever happens, happens. I kind of wanted to let it grow organically. But right now it's just basically social media content. I'm not on YouTube yet, but my plan is to move it over to YouTube because TikTok and Instagram and all those limit the length of the videos. And some of the topics that I want to talk about, I do want to get more in depth on. I definitely want to focus a lot on sort of these entry level concepts, but I do also want to get more in depth with some other things that require more than a a 3-minute video.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my next step, is to get over onto YouTube. And from there, I want to build a website. I would love to have merch someday for people to buy and wear proudly. And maybe in-person events. I would love to travel and speak to people in person. Um, these are all ideas I've had. I don't know how they would actually work yet, but someday I would love to also do maybe in-person riding coaching. I myself am not a riding coach, but I have a lot of experience under my belt. I've taken a lot of classes due to my job, thankfully, and just from my own passion of continuously learning and getting better at the sport of motorcycling. So that's another thing that I've just done naturally in the past, is help people become more confident riding their bike. People who already have their license, because should definitely go to a professional to learn how to ride a motorcycle. But there's that gap between learning to ride and then actually being confident on the street.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I want to help fill that gap too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just a lot of different places. I'd love to have like a blog, and I'd love to interview other people and put them on my channel. People who are also experts in their industry, areas that I don't know much about. So a lot of
Yeah.
ideas.
I mean, I love what you say about the riding, because it's so true. Like you can go and learn how to ride, and you can go to pretty good riding school and get a lot of really good like tips and a lot of really good methods and techniques and foundational stuff. But nothing can replace the experience of riding for like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And so I think it's good when there's people in the industry like yourself that want to just not go and teach people the basics, but share with them the experience you've built over the years you've been riding. And that's a shortcut in some ways, because there's stuff you figured out the hard way that you can then share with someone else and go, you don't have to take 5 years, 10 years to figure this out. Like, I want to share what what I've learned with you. I mean, I know that you were a part of quite a few, or part of kind of a big sort of community of female riders. Did you manage to keep your kind of riding group moving to Arizona? Like, were a lot of your riding friends in Wisconsin, or have you always kind of been connected with sort of women across the country?
Thankfully, I've been connected to a lot of women across the country. With us being a bit of a minority in this sport, it's easy to find each other, especially nowadays with social media. So I already had a lot of friends out in the West Coast. I've got a really strong group of friends out in Vegas, actually. And now I'm only 5 hours away from them. Bunch of girls in
Brilliant.
California. Yeah. So it's been pretty cool because I moved out here feeling a little bit nervous that I was leaving my community, because I was a really big part of the Milwaukee community, and I loved it so much. And I just felt like I was completely stepping away from that. I had to start over. And in a way I did, but there's a really big riding community in Arizona itself, but also just like in this part of the country. I realized that now I'm closer to so many of my other friends that I didn't get to see as often.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it's a pretty big deal moving to like not only a different country, but a different state, in a different climate, in a different sort of cultural part of the states for the first time in your life. Like, how did you? What's Arizona like in terms of a city you make friends in? Like, did you find it quite easy to slot in? Did you have the benefit of, so say, work colleagues, or was it quite hard to kind of find your niche?
I think it was kind of hard, honestly. I've been here just over 2 years, and only now do I feel like I've found my people. Um, but I mean, that was due to a lot of factors. First of all, Phoenix is huge. It's a huge city. So you think that would make it easier to find friends, but I think in some ways it makes it harder. Just because you don't really know where to look, and it becomes harder to kind of like pinpoint people that you get along with. But there's a couple of motorcycle groups, places like garages. There's a local garage here called 1110 that I started hanging out at. I started going to their bike nights and things like that. And they're also a very like inclusive minded motorcycle group of people. And just naturally started talking to people. Motorcycles are such a good catalyst to making friends. Obviously, everyone speaks the same
Yeah.
language, so that helped a lot. But yeah, I mean, just between like upsetting my whole life and kind of starting over in a new place, and then I had some big things happen with my family back in Wisconsin right when I moved to Arizona. So I found myself actually traveling back to Wisconsin a lot that first year, more than I expected. So that kind of took away from my opportunities to be meeting people here and fully jumping into life in Arizona. So that was a really big challenge too. But I had a lot of moments where I thought, did I do the right thing? Should I have made this big jump? And thankfully, that's where a lot of my close friends, especially my friends out in Vegas, I lean on them because most of them are transplants too. And they're just like, Nerissa, you have to wait it out. You did this for a reason. Maybe you don't know what the reason is yet, but you're going to figure it out. Just give it time.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's not. It's. I mean, that support circle is key. I think maybe I don't know what Phoenix is like, but I know that a lot of people say Cape Town is very difficult to integrate into, and one of the reasons is because it's not a because it's a big city, but there's a lot here. So it's big in terms of like it's a small city, but it's big in terms of the scope of what you can do. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
beaches and wine farms and mountains and hiking and mountain bike. Like there's everything. And so people are spoiled. So they don't really feel a need to make friends. They're kind of okay, you know? Whereas people say that in Johannesburg, where it's kind of bleak and there's nothing to do, and it's just this big, busy city, like people make friends really easily because you kind of have to go hang out, and the nightlife is very bustling, and there's a lot of like day markets, and there's a lot of stuff going on because people have no natural things to go and do. They have no beaches, no mountains to go riding in. So they kind of, and it's really daunting, especially like when I moved to Cape Town. I got lucky because I was a kid, so I moved here with my family, and my sister is like 2 years younger than me, so we're in a similar age group. So I just adopted all her friends and kind of went from there. But moving to a city like that as an adult is pretty scary sometimes.
Yeah. I felt like as I was trying to make new friends, it was almost as if I was dating. Uh,
Yeah, right? It kind of is like that.
uh, it is, you kind of hang out with somebody and you think, hey, you're kind of cool. Do you want to hang out again? Can I have your phone number? Or it's that awkward thing. No.
It's like being back in
But
high school.
yeah, it's weird. And I obviously never experienced that because this is the first time that I moved this far as an adult. And it was kind of awkward to navigate for a while. But yeah, I took my friend's advice. I was patient and I don't know. I tried to stick with what felt right to me. And
Yeah,
I think you just kind of like naturally attract people that are like your same vibe and
yeah.
it works out.
That maybe that's the toughest part. I mean, when you grow up with a certain like when you're established in the city, you have a certain value set, you have a certain like you know what you like, you know what you don't like, you know what kind of people you like to be with, and you don't want to lose that identity. So it's not like you want to go into a new city and just find anyone. You're like, okay, I've built this
Yeah.
up over like my whole lifetime, and I want to maintain this, and I need to find people that kind of fit with that.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it also is tough because maybe you feel pressured to leave parts of
Yeah,
yourself behind in order to fit in to find those new people. But in the long run, that's not you living your most authentic self. And I
absolutely.
think,
This
think
yeah, slow burn is worth it.
yeah, yeah, and I think thankfully I realized that, and I just kind of stuck with it. But Um, yeah, I definitely don't have as big of a community here as I did in Milwaukee, but I need to keep reminding myself that I lived in Milwaukee for like over 10 years. It took time to build that up. And now, like I said, that I live in a different part of the country, I have all these opportunities to grow an even bigger community outside of just my little radius.
Yeah. Did you so you lived in Milwaukee for 10 years. So where were you before that? Like where were you actually born and raised?
Just a bit north of Milwaukee, near Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
Okay. And at what point did you realize you wanted to create motorcycles for a living?
It took a while actually. So I worked at a different company before Harley, a company that actually made boat engines.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so backing up even before that, when I was in college, the reason that I went to college to be an engineer was because I actually love race cars. So for a
Makes
long time,
sense.
I thought I wanted to work in racing, and I went to school for mechanical engineering, got my degree, got out, got this job at a boat company, and there was actually a small professional race team that was close to where I was living at the time in Wisconsin. And I spent a lot of time with them on the weekends. I traveled all over the US with them as sort of their like low level assistant engineer. I was basically volunteering my time with them, but in exchange, they would pay for my hotel rooms and feed me and whatever because I was helping with the data on the cars and all this stuff. Um, and I got to shadow their head engineer while I was at the track, and of course, like build a lot of these connections around the pits and everything. So I started meeting people that were in the higher ranks of like IndyCar and IMSA and all these things. Um, and for a long time, I thought that's what I wanted to do. But having that experience made me realize that trackside engineering was maybe not where I was best suited. Just the style of engineering and all the other things that go along with it. I realized that I wanted to be more upfront in the development side of things rather than like on the front lines, basically. And I realized that my passion was really more in engine development, not necessarily vehicle whole system level development. So I started kind of tailoring my career towards that. So basically, ever since I left college, I've always worked in powertrain development in some way, shape, or form. So anyways, uh, I kind of realized all that. I realized that I wanted to focus more on engine development. Trackside racing wasn't for me. And then here comes along my now husband, and we get engaged. And then we decide that we want to move to Milwaukee. So just so many other like life factors happened at that time. And I did ride motorcycles before joining Harley, actually, because my dad had a motorcycle that I would ride with him on the back of growing up. And then after college, I got my own license, and I had a Ninja 500 as my first bike, a little
Oh
sport
yeah.
bike. I mainly bought it because it was purple. I didn't know anything else at the time.
I remember you
Uh,
told me this before. But I mean, what I mean that's as first bikes go. Let's be honest. A purple Ninja 500 is a pretty cool first bike.
I thought so.
I still think so. I mean, my first bike was a 50cc Honda Express, which is just basically a moped with a pipe down the middle. So I think a purple Ninja 500 beats that just a little.
All right. Thanks. I'll take your word for it. It was honestly kind of a piece of junk, but it was good that way because it taught me so much. It taught me how
Oh
to
yeah.
maintain a motorcycle, right? But yeah,
I think having a crappy bike at some point is a rite of passage. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, if you're gonna go out and buy a brand new bike, I'm not gonna hold it against you, and I'm gonna be a little bit jealous. But I've had a few like brand new bikes, and I've had a few clunkers, and I kind of miss the clunkers because you kind of bond with them more. Like nothing makes you love your motorcycle more than being stuck on the side of the road and then and eventually getting it running again. Like
yeah.
it's like
I was
you've
gonna
had
say maybe
it's
after the fact.
yeah, yeah. But what I'm saying is like it's like shared trauma brings us together, is what I'm saying. It's like
Trauma bonding.
yeah, when you've been through stuff with your bike, then it's like brand new bikes are cool, but there's just something that I don't know. There's something cool about at least being able to look back. I mean, my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle that had been done up as a Baja bug by my mom, and it like didn't run anymore. And as I said, I'm useless with engines, but I had a friend who was like, "Surely we can get this thing going," and we managed to get it started the one day. And I got yelled at by my parents because why did I mess with my mom's old car? And I was like, "Okay, but now that you've had your little rant, like it's running, so can I drive it?" They were like, "Okay, yeah, you can drive it." And so that was my first car. And it's like I see these kids that I mean, my wife works at the university, so she sees these students that pitch up in like brand new SUVs. And that's like their first car. And mommy and daddy just said, "What car do you want?" And that's it. And it's cool. I'm jealous. Like I mean, I'm in my 40s and I can't afford that car. But at the same time, like they're never gonna know what it means to actually like it's like they haven't paid their dues. And I'm not trying to sound like an old boomer saying that, but it's like there's something about having to suffer with a vehicle and have something that is a little bit sketchy, a little bit unsafe, and you don't know if it's going to get you where you're going. And later on, you appreciate the things you've worked for a lot more, I think, personally.
I think so too. Yeah, it's not about gatekeeping. It's just about realizing that there's a unique experience that comes along with that I
Totally.
think helps people more in the long run, right? And that's part of my motive with the She Knows Moto platform is to help those people that maybe want that knowledge and want that experience but never had it. And I totally agree. I always encourage people to buy an old crappy bike because the best way to learn is by doing, right? Like maybe if you can afford it, have a reliable bike that you can still ride every day, but then have another one that can just sit in pieces in your garage for a while. Because just like getting
Yeah.
your hands on things and seeing how things go together and how they function is so valuable. Like we are actually riding and something goes wrong on the side of the road, you're more likely able to diagnose it and fix it if you have that experience, right?
Oh yeah. And I've kind of realized that it's really good mentally as well. Like I've done things on my bike before that I kind of have to do something really minor. I remember changing steering head bearings once, changing wheel bearings, and these are things that I was like, I have no idea how to do this. But I also can't afford to pay someone else to do it. Like I just don't have but I just don't want to throw money at someone for something that is in theory very simple. And we had a communal garage in Cape Town,
So
and I went down there and rented the workshop for like an hour or 10, said to our buddies, I need to change steering head bearings. What do I do? And they all jumped in and they were like, you do this, you do this, you do this. And I changed my own steering head bearings, changed my own wheel bearings. And I was like, I didn't know I could do that. But once I'd done it, not only did I save a buck by not having to pay someone, but like I understood how the wheel bearings fit now. I understood how the front end of the bike went together. And I felt like it's just when you do stuff like that, it is outside of what you're doing day to day. It's just good for your brain. It's good for your mental health. You know, it's like learning an instrument or kind of getting outside. You know, when you and now I've been fitting stuff to my bonneville, and you know, when something's a little hard to work around and you have to move some wiring and you have to kind of like sort of, you know, everything's not fitting the way it should. When it's finally done, it's like wow, like I've really achieved something. It's super gratifying in a sense.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That's what I was gonna say is it gives you a reason to be really proud
Yeah.
and it kind of gives you more of a sense of ownership of this machine. And I think it bonds you to it more, right? I totally agree with that. You know, that's one thing that obviously like I realized that just in my own tinkerings in my garage with my own bikes, but I saw it so much when I was mentoring the high school girls on the Iron Angels team. Because, you know, these were 15, 16, 17-year-old girls who came in who had never used a wrench before. I mean, we started from the basics of righty tighty, lefty loosey. And by the end of it, we had built a motorcycle that was worthy of racing on a flat track. So I saw over the progression of those months that exact thing where they would point to it and say, I did that. I know how that works. And they could explain it to somebody else. And just like the level of pride and their confidence levels, the way their confidence would just soar was so good. It was so, so good. It was the reason I kept on coming back and doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's great. I think for teenagers as well because it's also like it's the practice of problem solving as well. It's like I remember when I was a kid and my parents used to hammer into me like you have to do math, like math is important, you have to do well at math, and I was like, you know, and kids always say like, but when am I ever going to use this? Okay, in your case, I mean, mechanical engineering, math is important, but a lot of kids go and then parents go, well, because math isn't about what you learn, it's about the business of problem solving. If you do well at math, it means you know how to solve problems and you can apply that to other things. I think for teenagers to get their hands dirty and actually build a bike, it's problem solving. And when you figure out those when you troubleshoot those problems and you learn how to fix those things and you get stuck and you have to push through, it teaches you tenacity and it teaches you not to give up and it teaches you how to apply yourself. So when that problem is like how do you pick a career or I want to go study but I can't study where I want to study or this, I've had a bad breakup or I don't know what sport I want to do or my sports team lost. All those things, I think you get better at handling those things when you work on the little things like building a bike, fixing something in the house. You build that confidence in that thing of I can actually navigate this because I can navigate an engine or I can navigate, suspension. So this is a piece of cake.
Yeah, that's so true. The practice of problem solving for some people is not easy. And you know, I guess I'm lucky in the sense that my brain works that way naturally, right? And that's why I ended up going in engineering. But you know, I've realized that for some people it's really difficult to go from point A to point B to connect those dots on how to get there. And I do think that not only working on a motorcycle, but even just riding motorcycles helps with that so much. And yeah, I love everything you pointed out because it's so true. I think like building that tenacity and that grit, even when you're just on a road trip. something happens. Maybe a road is closed and you have to figure out another way around the route that you were planning to take, or maybe something happens with the weather and you're unprepared for rain or something. It's like these little moments that motorcycles force us to grow mentally, physically,
Yeah.
to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone and outside of our boundaries. And I mean, that's personally one thing that I love so much about motorcycling is that it really sometimes forces you to get outside of your normal box and become a more well-rounded and more experienced, better person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I completely agree with that. I think it's because the stakes are so much higher on a motorcycle. If you go on a road trip in a car and you take a wrong turn and you kind of find you, I mean, you can find a trailer park or a parking lot or a rest stop and sleep in your car if you have to. Like it's no big deal.
Mhm.
You know, you can be. It's getting dark. You don't know where you are. You find a gas station. You pull in and you're fine. You know that happens on a bike. it's it's a different scenario. You know, if the weather is inclement, it's a different scenario. If it's really cold suddenly, if it's getting dark, it's one thing to drive at night in the car. It's another thing to be out on the road on a bike and you're less visible and you don't know if there's trucks on that road. um
Or
you know,
animals.
passing a truck is different in a car than it is on a bike. You know, you pass like a big 18 wheeler on a bike. I mean, the wind changes based on, you know, this big thing. There's, you know, yeah, I've passed trucks where I kind of pass the truck and suddenly there's turbulence and it's like you're holding onto the bike and then you get back into this pocket of like cleaner air. It's totally different. And it kind of becomes, I don't know, like every time I've been on a long bike trip, it's kind of felt like it's kind of felt like, kind of, at the risk of being cheesy, like action hero-y. It's like we got to get where we're going. You know what I mean? It's like we got to get there, and it's like a hard day's riding, and it kind of like it's more intense in a sense. And I love that because it's kind of like I feel like owning a motorcycle is like you get to play superhero all the time. You know, you get to ride a bike, which is just so cool, you know, and you get to go ride on roads where maybe people have ridden a million times in cars, but when you're on a bike, it's just so much more fun. It feels faster, even if it's not faster. Like it just everything feels amplified, everything feels a lot more fun. You get to dress up. It's like I read this as there's that meme that did the rounds that said like motorcycle gangs are so wholesome because it's just like friends having fun, dressing up together. You know, it's like you know, and it's like to me like that's like motorcycles are this fantastic like cosplay action hero fantasy escape that you can do without having to actually go and, you know, like you can just get away from your day-to-day reality and just go ride your bike and have fun with it, and it's just it can be a different thing, you know. And I have that feeling if I'm out on a ride or if I'm just going down to get groceries, like it's just
Mhm.
fun to be on the bike.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I never thought of it from that perspective, but I totally agree. It is fun to get dressed up with your friends and go ride around, but yeah, when you're on a bike, you're so much more immersed in your environment and you're forced to be so much more present. And
Yeah,
like you said, it just becomes such an amplified experience. And yeah, I think it helps you grow just as a person. It helps you have adventures. Like that's my thing is I always love adventuring, and I feel like motorcycles are always like my catalyst to an adventure. And they're always
absolutely.
a cool way to meet people as well because you can go anywhere in the world, and if you meet somebody who also rides a motorcycle, that's your common language.
Yeah, it's like instant conversation starter.
Hmm.
And I guess with your bike being as absolutely eye-catching as it is and being as gorgeous as it is, you're probably not short on conversations whenever you stop somewhere.
No, not yeah. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but that's all right because it's my bike.
Yeah,
It
totally.
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's sparkly. The whole thing is just
Yeah.
mad sparkles, and it's kind
Did
of that
you
like
did you
color.
is it a paint or is it a wrap? It's like that kind of holographic oil slick kind of. Is it painted or did you wrap it like that?
So the tins are powder coated. It
Yeah.
actually when I was with the Iron Angels, we had a sponsor who did powder coating. We would bring the girls to their shop and teach them how to powder coat the bike, whatever. And he had a
Oh wow,
sample
that's
of
cool.
this color, and I saw it and I was like, I need to have that. It sounds So I brought him my fenders, my gas tank, all those things. He did it for me, and then I have a couple plastic pieces on the bike, like the front fairing and some other things that I had a local painter color match, basically. So it's a combination of paint and powder coat.
Wow. Wow. That is a crazy color though.
Thanks. I love it. It's loud. The
Yeah.
crazy sparkle, and now I have all these purple accents on it too. It's a loud bike, but it's undeniably mine, and that's why I love
Yeah.
it.
I mean, look, I mean, my mom has a older Harley Softail that's basically custom sprayed like shocking pink metal flake with like every airbrush technique known to man, like on one bike. Um, it's very unmissable, but it's cool. Like it's that's the other thing. I mean, motorcycles are just they're so much fun to personalize. I mean, cars are you can customize a car, but it's a lot of money and it's a lot of work. And to customize a bike, you can start with one thing and just go,
Mhm.
yeah, like my bike looks like everyone else's, but they don't have that fairing on the front or they don't have these handlebars, like, and then you can go from there. It's just I've never had the inkling. I know that car tuning is a big thing, and I have a lot of respect for the car tuning community because I think what some of the guys get up to is just nuts. I love the sort of vintage 4x4 scene. I love the what guys are doing with custom 4x4s and SUVs and Land Rovers and just restoring them and resto modding them. But at the same time, I just think bikes are so much more accessible for that because you can do that with like literally any bike. You can buy a cheap junker or you can have like a brand new bike and there's stuff you can do with it. And it's just so much easier and quicker to just make it yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, bikes take up less space in the garage, which means you can have more of them. So
That's perfect. That is flawless logic. That is flawless logic. But like,
yeah.
what is it like? What is it like that? Because I mean, the Lowrider S, it's the Milwaukee 8 platform. It's one of my favorite bikes. Like, if you handed me a blank check and said go and buy a Harley, I'd probably buy a Lowrider S or a Lowrider ST. I've always loved that bike. So when you got yours, I remember looking. I was like on social media. I was like, damn it! Like, I'm like just a tiny bit jealous. But I mean, you had a hand in developing parts of that bike. I mean, what is that like to ride a bike that you? I mean, it's one thing to ride a bike that you've customized things on, but you've actually the inner workings of that bike.
I'll say it's a blessing and a curse. Um, so I love it because going back to just like feeling proud of something that you worked on. I definitely have that. I have that sense of pride every time I get on the bike, every time I see it, every time that I see one of my friends riding a bike that has parts on it that I designed or like the engine calibration, I developed that tune, right? It makes me feel so happy and so fulfilled that I had a hand in somebody's happiness, right? Because motorcycles are happiness machines ultimately. So I love that. But um, being so closely tied to it, I think sometimes I don't want to say it ruins the riding experience for me, but it definitely has moments where I need to like shut that part of my brain off and I need to just be a rider. I mean, especially with my job now working in engine calibration, I am so tuned in to the engines that without even looking at the tach, I can tell you what RPM I'm at, like within 200 RPM. I just like I know these engines so well because I've ridden them so much. And anytime I hear like the slightest thing, I'm like, oh, wait, what was that? Or like that didn't react right. Like maybe the spark needs to be more advanced in this part of the table, or all these things. I just need to stop, just ride the bike and have fun,
Is that hard to switch that off? Do you find yourself on other bikes and in cars and stuff? Do you find yourself being a naturally attuned to the engine and what it's doing kind of person? Do you have that going through your head the whole time? You're feeling everything out and you kind of listening to how the engine revs and feeling the road noise and feeling like the chassis and like are my tires a bit under pressure? Are my brake pads on their way out? All these little
Yeah,
things.
yeah, totally. I actually I have a big spreadsheet that I keep of all the different motorcycles that I've ridden over the years.
This
And
is
and I
so
do
good.
I actually like I rate them and I leave comments of like I like this or I didn't like this or what, right? And it's I mean,
You have to publish this one day.
oh, I don't know. People that might not be happy with some of the things that I say, but But yeah, of course, I'm always analyzing those things. I can't help it. I mean, oh my God, like when I get a rental car, if I travel somewhere, I'm I'm like, why is this knob here? This isn't very ergonomic. I hate this. Or
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. My pet peeve is TFT displays because before I got yeah, so before I got into sort of being a journalist, editor, photographer, all the sort of motorcycle editorial stuff, I was a designer. Mostly web design, and like user interfaces was my speciality. Like that's what we did,
Mhm.
and we built some pretty big websites, and they were pretty functional websites, and usability was just top of the pile. And so when I switch on a bike that has a TFT screen, I immediately start criticizing it in my brain. I'm immediately like, if you just give me a straight old fashioned speedo and there's just a dial and like an odometer reading, then there's nothing to criticize. Like, yeah, we've done it like that for years. I can see the speedo. But if you're gonna start throwing a lot of information into like one screen, like for me, you have to get it right. And I just start nerding out, and I'm like writing, I'm looking at this going like, this shouldn't be here, and I don't know why I have to push this button twice to get to this thing. Like, why can't this just be here? And it's just like, and I saw a job description the other day for basically like a designer for bike menus at a firm in Europe, and I was like, I looked at the qualifications, and it was actually quite an open-ended job, and it was like I looked at my background, I was like, I could probably qualify for this, and I was just like, no, I would go crazy. Because the second I design something and like someone said no, but it has to be like this because legally or whatever, I just be like no, 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 I can't. I get like sort of overly obsessed with it in like a bad way. But yeah, so I know what you mean. Like if you're able to create something a certain way, you kind of want everyone to do it your way because you know that that's the right way, you know, like or the
naturally.
best way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's tough, obviously, because everyone has different opinions and rides differently. That's a cool part of my job right now, being in engine calibration. Not only am I developing the maps for the power and the emissions and whatever, but I also get to work a lot on the drivability of the products. And that's kind of where like the art form comes in. And that's been cool because I realized that the way I ride motorcycles is different than the way my coworker rides motorcycles. Like even down to like what RPM do you cruise at on a highway, or how do you like when do you pull in the clutch and things like that. And that all affects somebody's experience on a bike. So it's like forced me to realize that there's not always one right way, and you need to kind of accommodate a lot of people and into like the design of something. And that can be really challenging sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, you would know this from your job, but what people often don't realize about motorcycles and cars and stuff is that there's a lot of work involved in building them, and that sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but people don't realize it. And I have to giggle sometimes because people will look at a concept bike on the internet and then like the production version will come out like a year later because they were just the concept was a teaser to kind of get everyone hyped up, and people will go, oh, they obviously changed this at the last minute because they saw that like people didn't like it or whatever. And I'm like, no, they didn't. They've been working on that bike for 4 or 5 years at least. They didn't change anything at the last minute, and there are so many hands involved in getting a
Yeah.
bike like from a concept. And people think you just, oh, this is a sketch, we're just going to make a bike, pop an engine in it. But I mean, Milwaukee 8 especially was a big update for Harley. I mean, that takes years to put together. And I guess the challenge is, like you say, you got to kind of pull from all these sources because you have to realize that, how you ride might not be how someone else rides. What does the market want? Emissions are changing every couple of years. There's, the Euro regulations are getting stricter and stricter. And like people don't actually care about Euro because they just want a bike that sounds rad and rides rad, but they know that you have to comply with it if you want to sell bikes in Europe. And so they don't actually get how much work goes into making the bike do all the things it has to do.
Yeah. And I think maybe part of that is maybe not being in an environment where a product has to be designed for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. You
Yeah.
get these custom bikes and you look at it and you say, wow, that's amazing. Look at all these special things that were done to it. And maybe that did start from a sketch and it was just somebody bolting things on and fabricating and whatever, and then it came to life. But that's one bike for one person. Building something on a production scale that, like, the large motorcycle manufacturers do, like you said, it takes so much more work and so much more consideration because it's not just for one person. It's not just meant to be ride in one country, in one geographical region, whatever. There's a lot of factors that need to be balanced to make it viable to meet all these needs.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were saying like obviously you ride the bike that you've developed, and that obviously, I mean, I would imagine you take some of those thoughts every ride back to the office with you and kind of like think about it. But is there, I mean, I'm assuming there's a big riding culture at Harley-Davidson.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that's,
Most, if not all of my coworkers ride.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, which is kind of important when you're making motorcycles.
Yeah,
But I just
I
I
think
just
so.
wanted to rewind real I just want to rewind real quick. So you were saying that back to when you and John got engaged and you moved to Milwaukee. So was that around about the time, and you had your Kawasaki Ninja 500, your purple Kawasaki Ninja 500. So was that about the time you started thinking maybe I want to make motorcycle engines instead of boat engines?
It was about that time. It was, yeah, maybe a little after that. So we basically moved to Milwaukee because I got my job at Harley, and his job, it just so work happened to work out that he was also planning to move to Milwaukee because we were not living together at that point, just due to our jobs. So basically, we moved in together, and then a week later, we got married. It was a bit of a whirlwind, but we made it work. Um, I I don't know that I ever had this like drive to say I want to work on motorcycles. I think it was more engines. I wanted to work on engine development specifically, and Harley was a company in my realm that offered me that. And because I did already ride motorcycles, I did have a bit of a connection. But I honestly don't think it was until after I joined the company and that I fully was immersed in this world that my passion really started exploding. I think being surrounded by it and learning the inner workings of not only the bikes themselves, but of the riding culture and the people that were involved in it. I think that's when the spark really lit inside of me, and I realized like this is my place. This is where I'm meant to be.
That's cool. And then how did you actually get involved? So just for anyone who doesn't not familiar with Iron Angels, so Iron Angels is part of, is it called Build? The sort of overarching Build Moto. So Build Moto is a annual. They run it every year, kind of bike build off between teams, and is it all sort of aimed at younger people?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a
And then you and some friends basically mentor this all girl team that's the Iron Angels. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the Build Moto program itself has been around for a long time, something like almost 15 years, I want to say, and it's only in Milwaukee. They haven't scaled it to other places yet. I think maybe that's on their plan someday. But anyways, it's an organization of volunteers from the Milwaukee community or like the greater Milwaukee area, adults who team up with high school students, and we form these teams. Most of the teams were specific to a certain high school. Maybe it was like a shop teacher or something that offered this opportunity for their students after school hours as an extracurricular or something. But I was at the point where I was living in Milwaukee for a couple of years, and I wanted to find something where I could get more involved and give back because especially girls, I always love talking to young girls about engineering and STEM and getting them excited about science. And I became friends with one of the board members from this nonprofit, and he said, "Well, what do you think about starting an all girls team?" And of course, I said yes, jumped in with both feet. So that was 2018 was our first year, and I talked to a couple of my other female engineering friends at Harley. They jumped on board as well, and we basically just started recruiting. I was friends with a local science teacher. It was at a local private girls' school. I went to their school one day with a little PowerPoint and just stood in front of the girls and said, "Hey, this is what we want to do. Anyone want to come?" And we got like 4 or 5 girls to sign up, and then they told their friends, and then before you knew it, we had our first team. So um, that just kind of took off from there. And like we as mentors, we're learning just as much as the students at the time. Because I mean, yeah, we already knew how to build a motorcycle, but we didn't necessarily know how to build this team. So it just like kind of progressed from there. And yeah, every how it works is every year we get a motorcycle around January, and it was usually in shambles, maybe like a barn find or something. That's how it started. It started with vintage Hondas. We had a CL 175 was our first bike that we rebuilt, but it's moved on now to more modern and bigger bikes. But we had 6 months to completely turn it around and turn it into a race bike. But it was done by the students. We were just there guiding and mentoring, basically.
That's so cool. I think I've seen that bike because I think I might have been, I either saw it online or I was in Milwaukee the year that they finished it. I can't remember. But yeah, I love that. I love that idea of just, it kind of bums me out that they're moving towards newer and bigger bikes, because I think the idea of just pulling a basket case out of someone's shed and saying, do something with this is like a lot more fun in a sense. So are you still involved with it like remotely from Arizona? Not
No,
too
it's
hands
it's
on.
yeah, it's such a hands-on demand that it was hard for me to be involved when I moved out here. And I'll be honest, moving out here, that was one of the hardest things for me to step away from. But um it was time for it to change hands and to grow. With different leadership comes new opportunities. So I'm so thankful for the experiences I have, and I'm still connected with some of the girls, even as they graduated high school and gone to college and started their own careers and everything. We stay in touch, which is so cool. One of them even came to visit me out in Arizona one time. Actually, two of them did. Um, and some of them even have their own license now. They ride, they have motorcycles.
That's
Yeah, it's
cool.
amazing. But yeah, I was really feeling the loss of that when I moved out here. And again, that kind of fed into my motivation to start She Knows Moto, because through the Iron Angels, I realized that I love educating people and, empowering people and building their confidence. So thought, why not just bring it to a larger audience?
Yeah, is it filling that is it filling that hole for you so far? Do you feel like you're scratching that itch with it?
It is. It's different because it's not direct interaction in the same way, and
Yeah.
and I know that I'm still building, but it feels like I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah. But it's cool because now you have more time on your hands for your farm and your weightlifting. How did you get into weightlifting, by the way? Because I'm watching your videos on Instagram and I'm like, damn, Nerissa, like, like throwing bags around and things. Like, what happened? I know, I'm impressed. What happened? Like, how did this happen?
What
Was it
happened?
like a social? Was it like a social thing? If you're not bulking, you're sulking.
I'm gonna use that. That needs to be on a t-shirt. So I had been into weightlifting for a while, even when I was back in Milwaukee. I was at a strength gym, and I actually I grew up dancing. So I was in ballet for 13 years of my life growing up, and I find like mental clarity in moving my body.
Yeah.
So just like being active is really important for me. And anyways, I stopped dancing, and then after college, I picked up weightlifting, and I found that I actually really liked it because weightlifting, focusing on the form of weightlifting, it kind of like triggered the same part of my brain that ballet did, where you have to like have very, conscious body movement and be paying attention to your form so you don't hurt yourself or you do it correctly. So, anyways, I started that. But then when I moved to Arizona, we found a new gym here, and it's a cool gym because they do all sorts of different things. There's power lifters, there's Olympic lifters, there's competitive people, there's people there who just want to work out for no reason at all. But there's also strongman. And I remember just going in, doing my workouts, and I'd see these people moving these implements, these big wagon wheels and these like comically large dumbbells. And I was like, what are you guys doing? That's kind of weird. I like that. I like weird stuff. So I just like went out there and I joined them and kind of got hooked into it because yeah, it's cool because it's so different and unexpected, and it kind of forces you to move your body in ways that like you wouldn't otherwise. And I don't know, it's cool to say that like you can deadlift 300 pounds and people just like can't
Oh yeah.
comprehend that. Like,
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's not like you say. It's that kind of focus of having to just like. I guess it's the same as riding motorcycles. It's an activity that you can't you don't just do it. Like there's things that you have to be conscious of. Like you have to be zoned in and kind of locked into it in a certain way. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You're not going to achieve what you want to
yeah.
achieve, or you're going to hurt yourself. I mean, it's true for both. Have you found like a good community in the sort of weightlifting community? Has that helped you get a little bit more embedded?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The weightlifting community in general, I think like no matter where you go, is always a really strong community. And like this particular gym that I joined here, it's awesome because people have a pretty competitive mindset, but in a healthy way, right? Like we're always pushing each other because we want better for each other. So yeah, I've definitely made friends through that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And it's cool. Like when because weightlifting and just like health and fitness is kind of a lifestyle, right? And when you meet people that are kind of like on that same wavelength, that just I don't know, things click a little easier.
Yeah, I mean, common interest is the number one thing I think that like helps people. Like at the end of the day, we're all so different, but we're all the same. And when you have a common interest, it kind of just quickly you realize how the same you are, and then you have a starting point to figure out the rest of the friendship with. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like when you have
Yeah.
a touching point, then you can kind of go from there, and you can be different, outside of that thing. You just need that kind of spark to kind of go a bit further. Um, is how's the farming community in Arizona? Because I'm still finding it hilarious that you that you basically have a. So hang on, you said you bought the house and the house needed work. So did the house need work inside and outside?
Yeah, it
And then you
did.
just decided, while we work on the outside, we'll just turn this into a little farm.
Oh no, it was already a farm. That's the thing.
Oh, so you
Uh
so you're just tending it.
yeah, we adopted it. There were over 20 fruit trees on the property when we bought it,
Wow.
and multiple vegetable beds, and there's a whole corner of the backyard that's dedicated to herbs. And mind you, this is like a normal house in a normal little suburban neighborhood. It's like less
Yeah, I
than
mean
a quarter.
that's why I keep going on about it, because I think it's so damn cool. It's like a little. I wish I had the space at my house to do this. Like, it's a little farm in the suburbs. I think it's
You,
amazing.
you don't need the space. That's what I learned. You can pack it all in because that's what the people did before us.
Oh wow.
Um, I mean, in fact, we actually took a lot of the plants out, like in the backyard, cleared out probably half of the trees because we wanted actual like usable space. I have two dogs,
Yeah, yeah,
and we
yeah.
wanted space for them to run around, but kind of pared it down to the plants that we like, the fruits that we'll actually use. And at this point, it's me just figuring it out. I do not pretend to know anything. No, learning as I go. Google is my friend. I found some local Facebook groups of like Arizona or Phoenix farmers, and I just scroll through those, and I'm like, what is this plant? A lot of it, the first year, so much it was, is this a weed or is this a plant? Do I pull it out? What do I do? Like,
Oh, that's so good. What have you harvested lately? Like, have you actually managed to? Have you had some good yields?
yeah. Another thing I've learned about having a farm is that the problem with it is when things are ready to harvest, you just have a ton of one thing. And it's like too much, right? So we have a grapefruit tree, for example, and this thing just makes hundreds of grapefruits, and I've got like 2 weeks to pick them. I don't like grapefruits that much, honestly. I mean, they're good in cocktails, but that's about it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, well, so I have like
What's your favorite grapefruit cocktail? Let's sidetrack here.
uh,
What's your favorite grapefruit cocktail?
I like it with tequila.
With tequila. So
Yeah.
I had a grapefruit in the house the other day, or not the other day, quite a while ago. Wanted to do something with it, made a whiskey sour with it, using the grapefruit juice instead of lemon. Yeah. And then I figured out if you do that, but you do it in a highball and top it with soda and maybe mix it grapefruit juice and lime juice, it's a hell of a summer cocktail.
That sounds great. I'm gonna remember that.
I shall send you the recipe. How are
Do
the
it because
old fashions
I
in
have a lime
Arizona?
tree too.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Oh man, it's perfect. How are the old fashions in Arizona? Tell me that's.
um,
I mean, that has to be the thing you miss the most about not being in Wisconsin anymore.
it is. It is.
I
Yeah.
mean, didn't Wisconsin invent the old fashioned?
Well, we have our own old fashioned. So it's a Wisconsin
Yes.
old fashioned. And the purists will say that it's garbage, but I don't care. We make a lot of our old fashions with brandy, and
I
we
have
also
not tried this yet. You keep telling me about this. I can't get my head around it, but I will
well,
try
it's
it at
the
some
best.
point.
It's brandy, and we also add sugar, and we also add a bit of soda, depending on if you want a sweet or a sour. It's a different type of soda, and
It's literally the only place in the world I've been asked how I want my old fashioned. That's how serious Wisconsin takes their old fashions. So I remember the first time I was in Milwaukee, and there was some condescension in there as well. Actually, I was at the so we stayed at yeah, so we stayed at the I forget the name of the hotel, but it's in
the Iron
the
Horse,
old
maybe.
and no, it wasn't Iron Horse. It was one of the very a little more bougie. It was in the is it the fifth district? It's the old kind of like industrial district that's become all kind of gentrified and hipstery. And this hotel was kind of like old face brick kind of thing, and found out actually that it wasn't actually a building, it was a parking lot, but they built it to look like the surrounding architecture to maintain this sort of oldie kind of feel. But it has a very popular rooftop bar, and I was there 2 years in a row for Mama Tried drinking on Harley-Davidson's dime, so it was a lot of fun. And I remember like the first time I ordered an old fashioned, she was like, you know, whiskey or brandy. I'm like, sorry, what? She's like, whiskey or brandy. I'm like, whiskey. She's like, bourbon or rye. Like bourbon. It's like bitter. She's like, sour or sweet. I'm like, this is too many questions for one drink. And then I remember specifying how I wanted it, and then she looked at me. She's like, oh honey, you don't want it like that. I'll make it for you. It's fine. And she just kind of walked off. And I was like, okay, I guess I don't know what I'm
Why
doing.
did you ask me all these questions?
Yeah, but it was damn good though. It was really, really good. Yeah, and then I remember when I left at the airport, there was actually like a little t-shirt kiosk, and there was one that was like this old fashioned, and it was like old fashioned, like the official drink of Wisconsin or something.
It is. It is. I actually I have one right here. My little
Oh,
toucan
that
is
is so good.
um
Oh, that's so good.
that's kind of my little homage to Wisconsin. That's a brandy old fashioned sweet. Um,
Oh man.
it's the best
Wh-
cocktail, and I've had some bartenders out here in Arizona who claim that they can make it, and I haven't found one that makes it quite right yet. So maybe that's a business opportunity. I don't know. Maybe I need to open like a classic Wisconsin dive bar in Phoenix or something.
Yeah, I think you should do that. That's a great idea because that's the other thing. Wisconsin dive bars are brilliant. Like, I mean, I have a photo of you. Oh man, I'm forgetting things too much lately. I'm getting old, but I have a photo of you in a dive bar in Wisconsin. You just got the "Go Fast, Don't Die." Remember they're doing the free "Go Fast, Don't Die" tattoos? Yeah, that one. You just got that. It was a "Go Fast, Don't Die" after party for Mama Tried, and I have a Polaroid or a Instax photo of you that I took, and you're like, we were just drinking, having fun, whatever. And only when I got home, like after the trip, because I took the photo, stuck it in my pocket, carried on living my life. And when I got home and sort of went through my trip photos, there's a giant blow up sex doll behind you in the photo, like perfectly. Like, here's Nerissa, here's the blow up doll. It's one of my favorite travel photos, actually. It was, yeah. It's that and you know Joe Gustafson. I'm sure you know Joe. Like he was at Harley for a while. Yeah. The other photo from that trip was Joe in an Uber with me, like the most hungover I've ever seen anybody in my life. Like so hungover that if you look at the photo, it's this crappy black and white Instax, and if you look at it, you'll go, "That guy's hungover." Like it is tangible. It is like visible on his face. That was my memory of that trip. But that was a great trip. I mean, like those little dive bars, and that was actually my birthday. So I was in Milwaukee on my 40th birthday. Yeah, and Morgan Gales was with me, and Mark Boucher from BMW, and we just went out and we went to Mama Try. We had a few beers there. We went to like one dive bar, another one, and it's just the culture is just so like it is cold as shit. Like it is freezing outside, and people are just out. Like they're just going from one place to the next, and it's just this kind of vibrant kind of nightlife, and it's just it's so easy going. I mean, like that weekend was the pre-party at Fuel Cafe. It's just like, I mean, people doing like burnouts on the bar counter with like pit bikes, and I remember there was like pit bike jousting in front of it, and it's like snowing, and I've got a photo of like snow falling, and these guys are jousting with pit bikes in front of Fuel Cafe, and it's yeah, I kind of miss that kind of culture. Um, and like you're drinking out of your Fuel Cafe coffee mug, and I'm so upset because I brought one back. Yeah, so I had one of those, and I broke it like a couple of years ago, and it was like my favorite.
Oh,
That was my every morning coffee mug. That one,
we'll have
but
to get
like
you a
yeah,
new one.
I might have to like I might have to like tap someone in Wisconsin and say, "There's a few things I need you to pick up for me." Like just put them in a DHL box and send them over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it
you're
is a great. Yeah,
it's such a good culture. I mean, especially with the dive bars and the motorcycles. I mean, obviously, alcohol on motorcycles shouldn't mix too much, but
no,
we make it work. You know, it's just
yeah,
it's fun. We just like to have fun.
yeah. So, thank you very much for making time to hang out. I want to leave you with this because I think actually, appropriately, I think you posted this quote alongside a picture of your motorcycle the other day, your purple disco machine. It said, "My goal isn't to age with grace. My goal is to age with mischief, audacity, and a good story to tell." Is that working out for you so far?
It is. I think it is.